So, are we cool with AI taking 98% of jobs? Because that's what we're told is going to happen, right? If we get AGI, it's going to take 98% of jobs. I guess the bigger question is number one, will it take 98% of jobs? Number two, what will happen if it takes 98% of jobs? The answer is I don't know. But I say 98% because sometimes the definition of AGI, it's kind of a wishy-washy term, but the definition people give is AGI is an AI that can do 100% of jobs. And I can press them on it. I can say, do you mean 100%? And they say, okay, well, maybe not 100%, maybe it's 98%. And I guess the case I'm going to make today is that last 2% is all the difference. Because if it is 98%, well, really that's kind of nothing, right? I mean, that's happened before. You could argue in the last 200 years or so, technology has taken 98% of jobs. Or if you go back to like 1600 versus 1800, technology took 90. Basically, every 200 years, um, technology is going to take 98% of jobs. Because you can argue that. You can argue if you compare like the big trucks that we have to deliver um, miscellaneous goods from some port city to a Walmart in rural Idaho, then the efficiency gains that you get from using that truck, burning that gasoline, running those wheels on the highway, that's probably 50 times more efficient than wheeling it on a carriage pulled by horses. And so you could argue it's 50 times more efficient. And if that's the case, then in terms of efficiency, it took 98% of, man hours, right? So what will happen if it takes 100% of jobs? Well, that's the question is like, what if we get into a post-scarcity economy like Westworld, like everyone has a private moon to play with? Um, there have been a flurry of articles recently about what's going to happen. You better make sure that you get in your cash now, you get in your investments now, because your descendants or great great grandchildren, if you don't work at Anthropic or at OpenAI and cash in that way, then your descendants 150 years from now, they're going to only own moons and they're not going to own whole galaxies. So you want to be on the train to owning whole galaxies, right? That's a post scarcity economy where basically the concept I think of post scarcity is all throughout human existence, economics has been based on the principle of scarcity. That's like one of the principal axioms of economics. I have another video where I talk about axioms of economics, and that's a principal axiom. Well, what do we do if that's not the case? What do we do if actually we don't have to worry about scarcity? And that's an interesting question. But the most interesting thing to me about that is maybe you can think this is a sort of overly clever point, but I mean we already live in a post scarcity economy effectively with respect to certain industries, right? For example, I can go to my kitchen right now, turn on the tap, water comes out, the water is drinkable. Um, could you get that throughout all of human history? Well, I guess you could go down to the lake and like drink from the water in the lake, but that's contaminated water. Like if you go to third world countries today, they have water sources, but they're all dirty. If you spent your whole life living in a first world country and go to a third world country, not to put too much a point on it, but you're going to get sick, right? Because your stomach is not adjusted to that. So arguably like our health is better because we have access to purified water now. But and maybe if I like run the water on all day, eventually the water bill is going to be higher, but I've never actually dealt with that problem. Like you can poop into buckets of water, you can uh like metaphorical buckets. You could take a shower, it's showering down rain on you, artificial rain for an hour, and I don't worry about the water bill if you are someone who takes long showers. Um I could turn on my faucet all day. I'm not going to worry about the water bill really. So that's a post scarcity example, right? What other things are like that? Um, well, kind of a lot of things are like that actually, like food and clothing. Okay, people I think don't appreciate how much of the labor force work hours in the past were dedicated to sewing, into spinning. Um, it's like the average woman in the past would spin 4 to 6 hours a day, 4 to 6 hours a day. Today, when is the last time you see someone knitting, right? It's when is the last time you see someone spinning? No, that happens in like Bangladeshi sweatshops that make our clothes, and then we go to the shop and I can buy a shirt for $15 or something, and it doesn't matter, and I can buy truckloads of clothes, and it might not bankrupt me. I'm not talking about high fashion here, but if you just care about like, the cheapest shirts, you can buy baskets of those things and hand them out at baseball games and hand them out at cross country matches with the team name on them, and then people throw them out because they're cheap. They're cheap clothing, right? In the past, to get a shirt of comparable quality, maybe not comparable quality, but comparable utility, it would have cost you like a month's salary. Like people spent 4 to 6 hours a day spinning. Okay, that's one example. That's clothing. What about food? Food, well, you all know, right? The classic thing. Men spent 6 to 9 hours a day farming during some days, some days of the season, right? 6 to 9 hours a day farming, and that's most people. That's like everyone farming. And now it's 1 to 2% of the population farming. So if we compare the numbers, it's 4 to 6 hours a day to 0 hours a day on spinning, and 6 to 9 hours a day to like 3 to 6 minutes a day if you average it across the overall population for farming, because only like 1 to 2% of the male population is actually farming nowadays. And they do it with big tractor machines, right? So that's the productivity gains to food. So yes, like food, fine dining, it can be expensive. But if you just care about the raw calories, it's not expensive. Like that's been solved. Food has been solved by the industrial globalized system of industrial capitalism modern states. Basically, food is a solved problem. We thought it wouldn't be. We thought we would run into a Malthusian trap, but no. Like we through the green revolution, better fertilizers, better farming practices, it's solved, right? So that's water, food, clothing, communications technology. Obviously, like I can call someone in a foreign country in Japan and they'll pick up and there's low bandwidth and I can literally have a conversation with them. Okay? Literally real time conversation with someone on the other side of the world. That's pretty impressive, right? That beats anything. Um what about travel, planes, cars, right? I can take a plane to another country. And so that's not like fully pro scarcity. We don't have a teleporter. I still need to wait in the plane, sit down in my seat for 20 hours to get to the other country. But it's pretty good, right? And especially if you compare to like taking a 2 hour car trip, I can go pretty far. Whereas like people don't understand how different it was when, like, if you think Victorian England or something, just to go to someone else's estate, that's like a whole week trip, and you're just going like down the street, right? That's a whole extravaganza of bringing out your sons and daughters into society where they take a really long trip to go down. That's once in a lifetime thing to go down to London for to be in high society, or just to visit the neighbors. That's a whole affair, a whole arrangement to see the neighbors. Right today, maybe it's still an arrangement, but only because you might not like your neighbors or something. But what about music? Okay, music. Um, in the past, it was just live music, and you needed to depend on whoever was the hobbyist musician, because probably most of the time you were not going to hear professional musicians. Today, I can, within 20 seconds from now, open Spotify, play almost any song ever recorded and of professional grade quality, of uh performed in a studio, remixed, optimal conditions, best quality sound you're ever going to hear, right? So that's every song ever recorded, pretty much. Um so entertainment, music, games, TV. So the machines have taken 98% of jobs at least. And this is probably all things that you already know. But why am I talking about this? I think the important point is like how important it is to make things cheaper. because each of these things as technologies, you could say, okay, we invent trucks that displaces the horse training industry or whatever. Isn't that going to put a lot of people out of work? And you can get into this question like, well, okay, fine, we're going to make things cheaper and more affordable and more available with technology. But what does it even matter, right? If we're just going to put everyone out of work? And the conventional economist explanation is no, it's just going to create new jobs. And that doesn't really land with people. It does seem like a paradox, right? What do we do if AI or some new technology, it solves everything, does all the work, but then no one has any money to spend it? So you could end up in a world where it's like basically post scarcity, infinite resources, anyone has everything, but no one can buy anything. So everyone's screwed despite that. So what do? It seems like a paradox. And so there are reasons to think it might be different this time. There are reasons to think that maybe it's not 98%, it's 100%. There are reasons to think maybe the types of technology or the types of jobs that we're losing this time are different somehow. And you can argue for that. I have argued for that. Um, However, I think just the base case, the default assumption is basically this will sort itself out. Like when we have these technologies that make things cheaper, you can think, how is this going to benefit the economy? Because at the end of the day, like Spotify, that's not collecting revenue commensurate with, or maybe Spotify is more contentious, but something like YouTube, that's not collecting revenue commensurate with like the letter writing economy of 1900 or something. So who's going to benefit from YouTube existing if no one is going to have any money to spend on YouTube? Well, the system works itself out. The answer is no one spends anything on YouTube. It is free. Once you have an economy where like everything is basically generated for free, it also costs nothing to consume it. Uh Maybe that's actually, I think that's kind of a bad monetization model. I would prefer if some of these services relied more on like subscriptions versus ad spend. But regardless, like just objectively based on the world that we're in now, like it just doesn't seem like the problem that people are worried about. Where are all the jobs? Where are the jobs? It doesn't seem like objectively people has materialized. And I think people projecting into the future at least have the put in the effort of understanding the past and understanding how different it was in the past and representing uh how those projections work going forward.